Okay, like a lot of people, I started reading The Realm of the Elderlings this year, and I was at a little bit of a standstill on what I should make this next video about, because I've read so much in the last year that I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about for sure. And so I sent a text out to some of my buddies who are in a fantasy group chat with me. And I was like, should I talk about Malazan? Should I talk about the First Law? Should I talk about Hyperion? And I also asked if I should talk about Assassin's Apprentice. The most of the interest seemed to be around Malazan or First Law. Malazan, I'm gonna say it wrong or differently every time I say it. But I kind of wanted to talk about this book because it wasn't really like anything that I have ever read. I really wanted to read it primarily because I haven't read a lot of female authors, and apparently if you're gonna read fantasy, Robin Hobb is like the female author to read, or so I hear everybody say online. And the premise in and of itself sounded good. Maybe not initially gripping like I kind of felt with just the whole world of Malazan or with the First Law. You hear a lot of talk about those two series. You hear a lot of talk about Joe Abercrombie. You hear a lot of talk about Steven Erikson, and deservedly so. And I will make videos about both of those series eventually. But this year, I'm seeing a lot of people starting this series, and so I thought, you know what? I'll bandwagon, I'll hop on. And this first book, I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty slow at the beginning. And I think that that's a recurring criticism. Maybe not even criticism. I think it's just I'm so used to reading fast-paced, in-your-face, action-packed fantasy that something that was a little slower, a little more meditative and character-oriented just felt so different. And that's not a bad thing at all. I need to find a place to put this, because if I... It's like, that's not gonna work. Oh no. I'll just, oh geez. It's all falling apart. Yeah, it just was a little more character oriented and slow paced, and also just the perspective in and of itself. I don't read a lot of first person perspective books in general. I kind of find myself gravitating towards that third person multi-POV story. And so getting used to only being in Fitz's head for the whole book was just different. I mean, and in a really good way. This is very much a coming of age story. It's very much about Fitz trying to find his place in court. In the royal society. The other thing that I thought was just so nice is her prose. The way that she writes her prose is so, it's like the prose equivalent of comfort food. It just reads so easily, and it so easily puts you in that world. She really spends a lot of time getting you to just love Fitz. He goes through these seasons of different bonds that he makes. There's these children down in the village from, there's the castle and then there's the village, and Fitz would go down into the village and play with these kids and get to know these kids, and they become a bond that he shares. And then there's Burrich, who is, the Houndmaster, his dad's Houndmaster, who takes care of Fitz since his dad has gone away. And then there's Chade, who is the king's assassin, who Fitz eventually becomes the apprentice of, ergo the name. But he has these bonds and these relationships with all of these different people. And it almost feels like the point of the book is him exploring those relationships and finding himself. There is an overarching plot of him being trained as an assassin, and towards the end, it really ramps up into a climax, but I will say, like, if you're not a slow book person, and if you're not primarily a character reader, you might struggle with this book, because there are points where the plot doesn't feel like it's really moving, because what Hobb is doing is just giving you as many days in Fitz's life as she possibly can. And it's kind of a sleight of hand thing that she's doing, because like the days where he is cleaning floors and running errands for clothing makers, and where he spends a winter apprenticed to a paper maker and a scribe, like aren't necessarily in and of themselves the most interesting things. Hobb's writing helps make it super interesting because her prose are just, her writing is just beautiful and it's super easy to read. But the plot in and of itself is very slow. And I don't think that anybody who has read this book would say any different. But what she is doing, the sleight of hand of it, is giving you as much time with Fitz as possible to care about him as much as possible. And whenever he gets, you know, beat down, which he does, and kicked while he's down, you just care so much for him because you've seen him from the time he was that little boy until these climactic big moments. It's really masterful the way that Hobb has done that. I wanted to talk about the magic a little bit. Hobb's magic is the perfect magic for this world, especially considering that since it is first person, since the perspective of the book is first person and you spend so much time in Fitz's head, the magic allows you to get other perspectives. If you don't want to know anything about the magic, which I totally understand because I think that my experience of reading this was better not knowing about the magic, then either skip ahead or you won't hurt my feelings too bad if you click off and go watch something else, but 3, 2, 1, you had your warning. The magic basically is that Fitz can have connections with animals, and it's kind of frowned upon because there is another kind of magic called the talent. I want to say it's more of your like traditional wizardy magic, but it is oh no, it's not the talent, it's the skill. So there's whatever Fitz's thing is called that I don't remember what it was called. And then there's the skill, which is like your Hogwartsy, have to study to learn it magic. And it serves as such an awesome and effective way to put our perspective in somebody else's head. Because basically what happens is like Fitz can bond with these animals, and then he can kind of experience things and see things from their perspective. I thought of like Old Yeller or like any of those Boy and His Dog movies where Fitz is running into town and he has this dog, you know, that's with him, and he can hear the happiness in the dog. He can feel the dog's happiness at being out of the castle, and he can smell all of the things that the dog is smelling, and you know, the dog's curiosity is infectious to him. And it's so cool because, you know, she can write from the dog's perspective too without leaving Fitz's real perspective. It was super cool. I mean, the first time that I really like I grasped what she was doing in the book, I just sat there and I was like, wow, this might be the most unique and inventive magic that I've ever read. And it's subtle. It's so subtle. It's not super flashy. It's not a huge cinematic epic battle magic, at least in this book. It could expand and get much bigger in the series, and if it does, cool. I'm curious to see how she would write that. But it is just lyrical and poetic and beautiful and tragic, and just, I'm not really talking about the magic anymore. I'm talking about the whole book. But it's just so good. And really, if you haven't read Assassin's Apprentice, I highly recommend it. Like I said, if you struggle with slow plots, if you struggle with character-heavy books, you might have a hard time with this, at least in my opinion. I could be wrong. But I hope you enjoyed this little rant. I'm sure that there's all kinds of stuff that I missed talking about, but I kind of just wanted to throw my hat in the ring of all the people who are reading this year, because I'm very excited about this series. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. And what else am I supposed to say? What is the YouTuber-y thing to say? Oh yeah, the notifications, turn those on. So that's all I got. I'll see you next time.